Right, thank you very much. Although I'm a lecturer by trade, I'm actually not a medical officer or any medical related. So today I'll be talking about something different, something non-technical, something related to medical, just a bit more on the patient side. For your information, I'm a severe hemophilia B patient, so I'll be talking about that, and we've been very active in our advocacy strategy, not just in Malaysia but around the world. So I'll be sharing a bit of how do we, because Dr. McCoy was talking about the upstream side, I'll be talking from the downstream, from the bottom-up approach from our side. How do we get a good treatments, how we go along with that. Right, so as you guys know, so ambassadors to advocate for clinical trials in chronic illnesses. So chronic illnesses in this case is hemophilia in my case. Right, so what is hemophilia? Just to give you a bit of context. So hemophilia is an X-linked recessive bleeding disorder. So it's inherited, right? So when it's inherited means it's if I'm severe hemophilia, my daughter will be carrier, and then my grandchildren would have 50% chance of getting hemophilia or not hemophilia. Right, so we don't bleed harder, we bleed longer. So if I got a small cut, I can bleed for 1 or 2 weeks, as simple as that, without proper treatment. And main issue is not bleeding because of the cut, it's bleeding because of spontaneous bleed. So sometimes you strain a bit, you walk a bit more than usual. Next day, you wake up in the morning, you would have bleeding in your joints. So we have a lot of hemophilia had bad joints and a bit of issues with the mobility. So back then in Malaysia, just to give you a bit of preamble, we don't have much treatment. I'm talking about in before 95. Before 1995, we don't have much treatment, and we improve from there based on the patient-centric and ambassador that we're creating. Right, so the prevalence is for hemophilia A, it's 1 in every 10,000 birth. Hemophilia B, so hemophilia B is 1 in 50,000 birth, and von Willebrand disease is 1 in 1,000. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, the main issue that we have is we are still underdiagnosed. So when you say we're underdiagnosed, based on the population, we are expecting we should have around at least 3,000 or 3,300 people diagnosed, but currently we are at about 1,900 patients getting treatments in Malaysia. So this is some of the impacts in daily life. So you might think it's just a simple bleeding disorder, but the inability to clot could affect you in a significant way. So those are the common bleedings, the common swellings, and long-term hospitalization just because of internal bleedings. That's kind of common in our case. So the hidden challenges for PWH means patient with hemophilia. So that's the term we always use. And so we always have problems with musculoskeletal, so development of joints, development of bones, and things like that, and deformity of the growth of the musculoskeletal would really affect the long-term health of the patients. And then more importantly is the psychological, because when you don't have treatment, you miss schools, you don't have a good psychological health in a way that you feel stressed, you feel alone, you feel you feel a bit stuck in life sometimes, that you don't grow up as a normal person. So that's pretty common. Social, so that's also a common one where they don't develop enough social skills because they tend to be alone, as well as access to treatments, especially particularly for those who are away from the central area. So who are in our community? So in our community, basically is one is the patient themselves. So the society is led by patients, for patients. So that's what we're aiming for. More importantly, we have number 2 is family members. Never underestimate the power of family members, the mothers, the wife, partners, siblings, kids, parents. You should really leverage on this. I'll get through this in the next slides. Caregivers, we work very well with our caregivers, with medical doctors to push our reforms and a bit of policy. And of course, we also keep in touch with the government and decision makers in some of the meetings, representing the society. So in Malaysia, we have the society is known as Hemophilia Society of Malaysia. It's is registered under World Federation of Hemophilia, and World Federation of Hemophilia is a registered entity under the WHO, World Health Organization. So why do we need ambassadors? So ambassadors would have a role, would have a central role, right? So, and they will link this whole community together. They are the one who's going to gel these people together, right? So in terms of patients and family members, they should be seen as a role model, right? So when they're seen as role model, they gain the trust. And then when you want to go for clinical trials, this is what you're looking for, right? Someone can be a role model. In terms of to the caregivers and governments and the decision makers, they serve as an advocate for a better treatment, for a better lifestyle and things like that. Whereas for between the family members and decision makers, they serve as a feedback and communicator to these key decision makers on the needs and the wants of the family members, or the support that they need. And between the caregivers and medical, they serve as a promoter to ensure that the patients are compliant to the treatment. Because you can sometimes most of the governments are willing to give you a better treatment, but at what cost? Right? So the cost could be sometimes, for example, in Malaysia, back then to no treatment, and our treatment is based on IV, so injections, IV. The next stage of treatment is prophylaxis treatment, which is preventive treatment. So whether you get bleedings or not, you take the shot. The issue with this is that you need to take the injections once every 2 days or once every 3 days, IV, right? Self-administered. So we have to learn how to do self-infusion. So the issue with this is that they are reducing compliance in this aspect. So that's why compliance is the most important thing before we go into better treatment. So we need to ensure that patients and the family members are aware of their compliance requirement. Right, so what is the expected skills of an ambassador? So before we get an ambassador, I think we should envision what kind of an ambassador or a leader should be. So in our community, we envision our leaders to be someone who is a good communicator, and he himself, the person himself, should be highly compliant to the treatment. Because if they are good communicator but they're not compliant, it's bad. They're going to say something bad to the treatment and whatnot. They're going to say, I don't comply, but I'm still good. You know, so that's bad. So it has to come together. Good community and compliance must come together. Can't be either one. Right. So that's the minimum requirement. So the other three is something good to have that we can train them later on, and we train them. We train the ambassador or the leaders to understand all the medical or technical terms of the disease or the disability themselves. Right. So he or she must have a bit of reasonable educational background and understand the relevant policies in pharmacoeconomics, especially pharmacoeconomics in patient perspectives. It's really important to drive this part to the government to get more budget for a better treatment. So our strategy is always something like this, 4-stage strategy, nothing fancy. Right, first stage is 1 and 2, empower and educate. Right, so empower is when we do this in the early stage of their life. So when they're in primary schools, we let them understand self-awareness of their disability, of their issues, what they can do, what they cannot do, how they live their life, and things like that. So empowerment, so that they accept this, of the conditions or their difficulties in life. Number 2 is to educate. So we educate them in understanding more about the medical conditions. Right? So what's going to happen if they don't get treatment? What's good to have, what's not good to have, and things like that. And then we give them platform to advocate, and finally to inspire others. So the first stage is where the critical stage before they get to the second stage. Right, so our development activities are something like this. So we have boys camp, so 7 to 17 years old. So this is where we self-awareness, right? So this one we empower them. So when I was a kid, when I joined the boys camp when I was 7 years old, who sends their kid to 7 years old to somewhere you don't know and just living there somewhere, go together with your friends. So I was in that stage, but I thank my parents for sending me, forcing me to do that, getting out of my comfort zone in a way. But basically we have boys camp, youth camp, leadership workshop, women's support group. So leadership workshop is something that actually we do activities closely with cancers societies too. Maybe not in Malaysia, but recently we sent 2 of our members to participate in the leadership activities in Rare Cancers Australia, organized in Singapore just this past few days. So we work together with rare diseases, with Cancer Society, and some other activities too. And we have women's support group. So like I said, never underestimate the power of mothers, the power of partners. So they are the ones who are driving this a lot high. In Indonesia, the biggest advocate is the wife to a hemophilia patient. In New Zealand, it's the mother because his son passed away because of the severe bleeding. But he keeps on engaging and doing this, a lot of advocacy work. We also have fellowship program by the World Federation of Hemophilia, so that's a very exclusive program. If you see the leadership traits in our team, we're going to propose that details to the World Federation, and we've been very successful in growing our talents. And we also have regional activities. The regional activities not only for patients, we have engagements with medical officers, with the carers, caregivers, physiotherapists, and psychiatrists and all like that together. Right. So in terms of boys camp, right? So boys camp, patient-led, it's basically split into 2 key activities, right? So patient-led activities where we work together, we play around together, we inspire. Because back then we don't have much treatment, so all the seniors would teach us how do you study without going to schools. How do you polish your self-study skills? What do you do when you are sick? So we have to find another way around to do that, right? So we have a study strategy. We have problem sharings at young adults between, once they get to maturity rate at high schools, they have different challenges. So we have that problem sharing sessions, we have fun games and rewards. For medical activities, we give a bit of these patients on their dental health, right? So check on their dental health, counseling, physiotherapy, as well as treatment compliance. And we also teach them how to do self-infusion since they were a kid. And how do they manage their pains? What is access to their pains and things like that. So those are very important for us to lead them from a young age. Right? So even when I was a kid, I've had sessions with psychiatrists, with counselors, and I really think this really helped us in some ways to develop our social skills and our psychological skills, so that they kind of tell us, okay, this is what you can improve on, and this is what I think your strength is on this, and things like that. So we always have continuous engagement with our patients. In terms of youth camps, is from typically 17 to 30 is young adults. They have different sets of challenges. They just either studying in university, in college, or they just started their career, or they just want to start their own family. So it's different set of problems. So we create a different set of activities. So definitely there's games, success stories, leadership, more on activity planning, fundraising, media engagement, and medical technical. So this is where we engage them in more scientific way. Or regardless whether they're medical background or they're not medical background, they have to learn something on this. And how do you, because currently I think media plays an important role, so media strategy is something that we really look into. This is, the photo here is one of our workshops that we do, leadership program in Sabah, where this is the first time we had a 5-year project in Sabah when I was started at 2015. But we end up finished earlier in 2018 because they are self-sustained, so we kind of let them run their own program. So at this stage we do boys camp for the kids. At the same time we do leadership camp, so that while we mentor the leaders how we should go around and do this. So we do everything in one go in this activity. So we also have leadership and fellowship. This is where you educate and advocate. So you see, we have boys camp, so we have a large pool of people, and then youth camp. So typically your pool kind of reduce a bit, and then you start to see few patients are very engaged, and they are slowly getting into showing their interest on the leadership. So we choose this, and we do a lot of activities as such. So leadership and governance, we teach them on advocacy strategy, fundraising, media engagement, standard of care, education and outreach, youth engagement, community data collection, analysis, evidence-based advocacy. And evidence-based advocacy is a very important topic for us, because when we engage to the government that we want to have prophylaxis treatment, it's going to increase the cost definitely, because instead of getting the medicine when you need it, now you have to take medicine once every 2 or 3 days, right? So that's really increase the cost. But how we do the pharmacoeconomics is that they have less joint damage, they have better life, so they have better career, so they would contribute to the tax and things like that. So for the quality of life, at the same time the beneficial long-term benefits, so that they don't require surgery, they have good joint health, and those are the kind of things that we quantify. We collect the data and we present to the government to get this. And then definitely we can't start with all of the patients. We always start with kids, because people have soft spot for kids, right? So we start, even in Sabah, once we get the compliance, we start. It's really hard to start. The budget is going to blow. We just say, okay, let's start from kids below 9 years old. If you're happy, then we increase from 12, and then 18 to below. So we start to increase slowly, and then. But like I said, the seniors have to sacrifice a bit, and we do the legwork, but not for us. We do for the future. Most important thing is that our focus is always on patient-centered care, and we always use intergenerational strategy for comprehensive care. When we say intergenerational strategies, it's not just for me, it's for the future. If I don't get it, I want to make sure people next to me get it. So there's always our mentality that we put in our patients, that I've had a hard life, even if I don't get it, someone after me should benefit out of it. So that's why if you're asking of a patient, out of 10 who wants to participate in clinical trials, 9 of them will say yes, definitely, because of just this intergenerational strategy. And what we learned, lesson learned, success in clinical trials is basically in society we have to start early, right? And we provide opportunity and platform to share, especially when they are young. Give them a bit of room, platform to share, to talk, to polish their leadership skills. And we also plan the succession planning. So you always want to have ambassadors or people, the leaders, at every stage, because you have to understand that they won't be engaged all the time. So they typically is going to engage when they're at university, and then they're going to drop down a bit because they just started to work, and then they're going to join back. They're going to be active again. So it depends. So you have to measure the gap and ensure that the gap is always filled. And you have to make sure that you have the right group, right activity for the right people, and always keep them engaged. And I think this is something that really the society in cancer can appreciate on some of these activities. For medical professionals, I think what we do, we work together with medical professionals. We always share the vision of comprehensive care. What would it be? What we would like, and we always work together with them. And for medical professional, the good thing about it is, I think why it works for us is that they always understand the challenges of the patients, and more importantly, they trust the patients. So if I say to my doctor, I need to take medicine, pain score is 9 out of 10, I think I need this dose, 50% of the dose, more than usual. The doctor will say, okay, because they have educated us on dosing, have educated us on this. So because it's patient empowerment in the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. Because of the trust of the doctors makes us trust the doctors, right? So, and we be involved in policy development, and participate in development programs. And our programs don't only include patients, we also include medical professionals. Right, so just to wrap this up, back to how does this bring it back to the clinical trials. So having the leaders, I think ambassador would really play a central role, because they are the ones who's going to gel everything together. They are the ones who's going to advocate the clinical trials to the patients, to the family members. At the same time, they are the one who's going to propose the details or the policy, the treatment, the comprehensive care to the medical and the key decision makers. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much. Questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much for sharing the patient, or rather the ambassador advocacy, and I think it's a brilliant example. I was just wondering, I'm happy to note that there's no issue on transfusion-related infection, but certainly we are much aware that, particularly with hepatitis C, where the testing was only available worldwide in the early 1990s. So do you still see that as an issue in your patient group?
Okay, so we've had a lot of cases back then that caused a lot of mortality in early 90s. I know some of my seniors passed away because of that issues. When I was still a kid, so we went to camp suddenly next year, it was there. It's like, where is he? Typically he joins. Oh, someone said, he passed away because of this. So, but currently, we're still at a risk for that. But I think since, can't remember, since probably 2015 or a bit earlier than that, we use recombinant chemical-derived product. But some patients have not suitable for that product. They still have to use the blood-derived product in some way because it's more effective. Because it takes, sometimes it depends on the patient's dynamics in the end of the day. There's always a risk, and we understand the risk, and I think in the end of the day, it's the risk that we are willing to take. Even when I was a kid back then, I think after 1995, we don't see much cases on that, thank God. But we have to keep on, I think every 6 months we take blood tests, flu blood tests.
So there is routine surveillance being done?
Yeah, so routine surveillance every 6 months, and then every year we have a bit more detail. That I think some of the blood is sent to Singapore for some of the tests. So we had that issue.
Any more questions? No? Sorry. No worries. Just go for it. Your organization is an NGO, right? And it's a volunteer-based.
Yeah, true. Yes.
So my question is, how do you carry out the succession planning for NGO, because it's volunteer-based? So I'm wondering how the succession planning is done.
Okay, so in terms of succession planning, we see the commitment of the community, because like I said, you can't be depending on patients alone, because sometimes the patient is busy, they're working, and they have other tasks and things like that. That's why sometimes we engage with mothers. We have retirees who join us. Although they are not in the leadership role, they're part of the advisory role, and they are there to assist the main committee working on that. And for our committee, executive committee, we try to keep them young, right? So we don't let. I think only the president is 40 years old. The rest is 20s. So we want to maintain that as young as good. Because when we go to the World Federation program, you will be surprised that I met a patient, age 21 years old. He led a $2 million fund to do humanitarian aid in Africa to help hemophilia. So I think at that time I was 27. I said I thought I'm young, I'm late. So I was thinking that, and then so I was asking them how do you develop this? They say just they are given an opportunity and they're ready to take it. And that's why we always try to engage university students to be part of our committee, because they have a bit of time and they still have energy and drive to proceed. and they are relevant to the young ones. Sometimes you have generational gap, it really does exist. So you always want to keep them and groom them to a more leadership role. So maybe from that university age, they are more engaged in patients, but as they grow and they start working, they improve their professionalism. We want to bring them to the professional where they meet the key decision makers, the ministries, and people like that. So that's how we grow. It's just that typically only the president is a bit old to give the strategic direction, but the rest is very young.
Any more questions? Okay, so I think we'll move swiftly on to the next section.
Thank you very much.